You think you know Arizona because you live there or visited once. But hidden beneath the desert sand and canyon walls are 50 geographic secrets so wild that even lifelong Arizonans have no clue they exist. And what we found at number 1 will completely change everything. Starting at number 50, Arizona owns more protected wilderness than any other state in the entire Southwest. We are talking 90 separate wilderness areas covering over 4.5 million acres of untouched land that most people will never see. Think about that for a second. While everyone focuses on the Grand Canyon, there are 89 other massive wilderness zones scattered across this state that barely anyone knows about. These places remain completely wild and practically invisible to the modern world. At number 49, the famous town of Tombstone sits on top of one of the biggest underground water reserves anywhere on the planet. Yes, Tombstone, the place known for gunfights and desert dust, is literally floating on an ocean of fresh water. The irony is almost painful. This historic Wild West town exists in one of the driest deserts in America. Yet right beneath the dirt where outlaws once dueled, there is enough water to supply a major city for decades. Coming in at number 48 is something that sounds impossible. Arizona contains the largest continuous ponderosa pine forest anywhere in the world. Not California, not Oregon, not anywhere else. Arizona owns this record, and most people have never heard about it. The Mogollon Rim stretches across the state covered in these massive pines, creating a forest so enormous that you could drive for hours and never leave the trees. This completely destroys the stereotype that Arizona is nothing but cactus and sand. Number 47 will break your brain. Lake Powell has more shoreline than the entire west coast of the United States combined. Over 1,900 miles of shoreline from a single man-made reservoir in the middle of the desert. To put that in perspective, you could walk the beaches from Mexico to Canada, along the Pacific Ocean, and Lake Powell would still have more coastline. This artificial lake created more shoreline than nature built along thousands of miles of ocean. At number 46, we hit something truly unique. The Sonoran Desert is the only place on the entire planet where the iconic saguaro cactus grows naturally in the wild. You cannot find them growing wild anywhere else on Earth. Every movie, every cartoon, every image you have ever seen of the American Southwest with those tall cacti with arms raised up, that only happens here. Take the saguaro out of Arizona, and it disappears from the wild forever. Number 45 sounds like magic, but it is pure science. The painted desert literally changes colors throughout the day as different minerals in the rock reflect sunlight at different angles. The desert transforms before your eyes from dawn to dusk. Watch the same hill in the morning, and it glows pink. Return at noon, and it burns red. Come back at sunset, and it shifts to purple. The ground itself becomes a living painting that never stops moving. At number 44, Arizona claims both the highest and lowest elevation points in the entire continental Southwest. This state contains the most extreme vertical geography of any state in the region, all within the same borders. You can stand on a mountain peak higher than anywhere else around and drive a few hours to a valley lower than all the neighboring states. Arizona basically folded the earth into the most dramatic landscape possible. Number 43 takes us back in time. Verde Valley was once a massive prehistoric lake that dried up millions of years ago, leaving behind some of the richest fossil deposits anywhere in North America. Scientists keep finding ancient creatures perfectly preserved in these rocks. Where you see red dirt and scrub brush today, giant prehistoric animals once swam in deep water. The valley holds countless secrets still buried beneath the surface. Coming in at number 42, Arizona is one of only 4 states that contains all 4 major North American desert types within its borders. Most states are lucky to have one. Arizona collected all 4 like it was showing off. The Sonoran, Mojave, Chihuahuan, and Great Basin deserts all meet here, each one completely different, with unique plants, animals, and landscapes. Arizona basically became the ultimate desert showcase, and nobody talks about it. At number 41 is something that shocks everyone. The Kaibab Plateau north of the Grand Canyon gets more snow every year than Flagstaff does. Yes, more snow than the city famous for being Arizona's winter wonderland. This plateau sits so high and catches so much moisture that it buries itself in snow while the desert below stays bone dry. You can literally look down from a blizzard into the Grand Canyon where it is warm and clear. Number 40 brings us to Meteor Crater near Winslow. This impact site is almost 50,000 years old but looks like it happened yesterday because Arizona's dry climate prevents erosion. The crater remains nearly perfectly preserved after all this time. Most meteor craters on Earth wash away or fill in after a few thousand years. This one froze in time thanks to the desert air. Walking to the rim is like stepping into the moment right after impact. At number 39, the San Francisco Peaks are actually the remains of a volcano that once stood taller than Mount Rainier. This mountain used to tower over everything until it collapsed in a massive eruption thousands of years ago. What you see today is just the broken remnants of something far more massive. The entire mountain literally blew itself apart, and what is left behind still dominates the skyline. Imagine how enormous it must have been before. Number 38 is almost unbelievable. Arizona has over 600 named mountain ranges scattered across the state. That is more than almost any other state in America. 600 separate ranges, and most people think Arizona is flat desert. Every direction you look, another mountain range rises from the ground. The state collected mountains, like other places, collect hills. This geographic diversity gets completely ignored because everyone focuses on the canyons instead. Coming in at number 37, the Little Colorado River runs bright turquoise blue, and people always assume it is pollution or algae. But the real reason is natural travertine deposits in the water, reflecting light in the most stunning way. The river created its own blue color through pure geology. No chemicals, no contamination, just minerals turning the water into something that looks too beautiful to be real. Nature painted this river turquoise on purpose. At number 36 sits a lava river cave near Flagstaff that stretches over 3/4 of a mile underground. This tunnel was carved by flowing lava that eventually drained away, leaving behind a hollow tube through solid rock. You can walk through the exact path that molten lava once flowed. The walls still show ripples and patterns from when the rock was liquid and moving. It is like exploring the veins of a sleeping volcano. Number 35 is the Mogollon Rim, a 200-mile escarpment that shoots up to 2,000 feet high in places. This cliff represents the southern edge of the Colorado Plateau and divides the state into two completely different worlds. Stand at the bottom and look up at this massive wall of rock that seems to go on forever. Everything north of the rim is high plateau country. Everything south is basin and range desert. The rim is where two different versions of Earth collide. At number 34, the Chiricahua Mountains are considered one of the most biodiverse areas in all of North America. Species from 3 totally different climate zones all live here together in the same mountain range. You can find desert animals, mountain creatures, and tropical species all within a few miles of each other. The mountains created so many different microclimates that evolution went wild and packed in everything it could possibly fit. Number 33 causes constant confusion. The wave, that famous striped rock formation everyone thinks is in Utah, is actually in Arizona. The border placement fooled millions of people into crediting the wrong state. Those Instagram photos tagged as Utah landmarks are technically Arizona geology. The most photographed rock formation in the Southwest belongs to Arizona, but Utah keeps getting the credit. Geography pulled off the ultimate identity theft here. Coming in at number 32, Oak Creek Canyon's water stays freezing cold year-round, even when the air temperature hits 100 degrees. The secret is underground springs fed by snowmelt from thousands of feet above the canyon. That snow melts slowly underground and travels through rock for miles before emerging as ice-cold spring water. By the time it reaches the creek, the water remembers winter even in the middle of summer. At number 31, Arizona has natural palm oases hidden in several canyons. These are actual palm trees, growing wild in the desert, remnants from when the climate was much wetter 10,000 years ago. These palms survived when the climate changed and everything else died off. They found the exact spots where underground water still flows, and they have been holding on for thousands of years, waiting for the rain to return. Number 30 brings us to the Petrified Forest, where the ancient trees did not actually grow here. These massive stone logs floated over 100 miles during prehistoric floods 225 million years ago, before turning to rock. The trees came from somewhere else entirely, got swept up in ancient catastrophic floods, traveled for miles and miles, then got buried and slowly transformed into stone. This forest is an accident of geology that took millions of years to create. At number 29, Canyon de Chelly contains spider rock, which rises 800 feet straight up from the canyon floor. That is taller than any building in Phoenix, a natural tower of stone bigger than the tallest skyscraper in the state. This monolith stands alone in the middle of the canyon, like a monument to time itself. The Navajo consider it sacred, and the rock has stood there for millions of years watching civilizations come and go below. Number 28 involves a secret that lasted 14 years. When Kartchner caverns were first discovered, the finders kept them completely hidden from everyone to protect the caves from vandalism and destruction. For over a decade, these people knew about one of the most beautiful cave systems in America, and told absolutely no one. They kept the secret perfectly, until they could guarantee protection. Imagine finding something that incredible, and staying silent. Coming in at number 27, the Superstition Mountains hide a mysterious canyon system called the Maze that has never been fully mapped. Even with modern technology, parts of this area remain completely unknown and unexplored. People have tried for decades to chart every passage and dead end, but the canyon system is so complex and dangerous that sections remain total mysteries. Somewhere in those mountains, paths exist that no map has ever recorded. At number 26 sits Montezuma Well, a natural limestone sinkhole that produces 1.5 million gallons of water every single day. It has been flowing at this exact rate for at least 10,000 years without ever stopping or slowing. The well never runs dry, never floods, never changes. For 10,000 years, the same amount of water has emerged from the ground every day like clockwork. Scientists still do not fully understand how this geological fountain works so perfectly. Number 25 is actually kind of haunting. Arizona has more ghost towns than any other state in America. Over 275 documented abandoned settlements, scattered across the desert and mountains. Entire communities that once thrived, now sit empty and crumbling under the sun. The dry climate preserved these towns almost perfectly, so you can walk through them and see exactly how people lived before everyone left and never came back. At number 24, the Grand Canyon creates its own weather system completely separate from the surrounding area. Unique cloud formations occur inside the canyon that you cannot find anywhere else on Earth. The canyon is so massive that it bends wind and moisture into patterns that exist nowhere else. Clouds form and move in ways that only happen here because the geography is so extreme it literally invented new weather. Number 23 explains those famous Antelope Canyon light beams. They only appear during specific months at specific times of day when the sun angle is exactly right. Miss the window and you miss the magic completely. The canyon walls funnel sunlight down in these perfect beams, but only when everything aligns. It is not random. It is pure geometry and timing. Nature created a light show, but you have to show up at the exact right moment. Coming in at number 22 is something that breaks your brain. The Colorado River carved the Grand Canyon, but the canyon itself is older than the river's current path. The canyon existed before the river that supposedly created it. The river changed course millions of years ago and found this ancient canyon system already there. It did not carve the whole thing from scratch. It just deepened and widened something that was already waiting in the rock. At number 21, Organ Pipe Cactus National Monument is the only place in the entire United States where the organ pipe cactus grows wild. Cross the border into Mexico, and you will find them, but nowhere else in America. This strange cactus with multiple arms growing straight up like organ pipes decided that this one specific corner of Arizona was the only acceptable place to live in the whole country. The border is literally where their range ends. Number 20 gets weird. Sightings of the Mogollon Monster, which is basically Arizona's version of Bigfoot, cluster around a specific geographic fault line in the White Mountains. Not random locations, one specific geological feature. Whether you believe in the creature or not, the pattern is strange. Something about that fault line keeps drawing reports to the same area over and over. Maybe there is a reason, maybe it is coincidence, but the geographic connection is undeniable. At number 19, Sedona's red rocks contain more iron oxide than actual rust. These rocks are so old that they formed before the oxidation process that gave them their color even existed on Earth in the same way. The rocks are literally older than the chemical reaction that made them red. They sat there for millions of years, and then the world changed around them and slowly painted them this incredible color after they had already been stone for ages. Number 18 takes us back to the 1860s, when the Salt River was actually navigable by steamboat. Before the dams came, this river was deep and wide enough for full-size boats to cruise up and down. The entire ecosystem was completely different. Then humans built dams, and the river changed forever. What used to be a major waterway became the controlled flow we see today. The original wild river is gone, and never coming back. Coming in at number 17. Arizona has an official canyon country that contains more slot canyons than Utah does. Utah gets all the fame, but Arizona actually owns more of these narrow carved passages. The only reason nobody knows this is because Arizona's slot canyons are harder to reach. They hide in remote areas where most people will never go. Utah's canyons are accessible, so they became famous while Arizona's stayed secret. At number 16, the Huachuca Mountains mark the northernmost point where jaguar tracks have been documented in modern times. These big cats occasionally cross up from Mexico, and the Huachucas are as far north as they dare to roam. Jaguars in Arizona sounds impossible, but the evidence is real. These mountains represent the absolute edge of their range. Any farther north and the jaguars turn back. The Huachucas are literally the last place in America where wild jaguars walk. Number 15 is Sunset Crater, which last erupted in 1085 AD. That makes it one of the youngest volcanoes in the entire continental United States. This thing was spewing lava just under 1,000 years ago. Native Americans watched this volcano erupt. People were living here when the mountain exploded and covered the land in fresh lava. The crater is so young geologically that it barely counts as ancient. It is practically brand new. At number 14, the Grand Canyon exposes rocks that are 1.8 billion years old. These stones are nearly half the age of planet Earth itself. You are looking at rocks that formed when Earth was still basically young. The canyon cut so deep that it reached back to almost the beginning of the planet's story. Those rocks at the bottom remember a version of Earth that was completely alien and unrecognizable. Half of Earth's entire history lives in those walls. Number 13 reveals that Arizona's Coconino sandstone layer contains fossilized sand dunes from an ancient Sahara-like desert that covered this region millions of years ago. These are not just rocks, they are frozen dunes turned to stone. You can still see the ripple patterns from when wind blew across the sand. The entire landscape was buried in dunes that slowly compressed and hardened. Now you walk on what used to be a rolling desert that turned into permanent rock. Coming in at number 12, the Four Corners Monument is actually 1,807 feet east of where it should be. A surveying error back in the 1800s put the marker in the wrong spot and nobody fixed it. Technically, everyone taking photos at Four Corners is standing in the wrong place. The real corner is over a third of a mile away. But the wrong spot became official, so now the mistake is permanent and legally recognized. At number 11, Havasu Falls produces turquoise water because of calcium carbonate in the flow. The falls have actually moved upstream over time as mineral deposits build up and change the landscape. The waterfall is slowly walking backward up the canyon. The minerals create new rock that shifts where the water falls. In 1,000 years, Havasu Falls will be in a completely different location than it is today. Number 10 is Meteor Crater again, but with a twist. Arizona contains North America's best preserved impact crater structure, and the whole thing is privately owned. One family owns the impact site of a meteor that hit Earth. You have to pay admission to see the crater, because someone literally owns the hole in the ground that an asteroid made. Private property includes a 50,000-year-old scar from space. That is the most Arizona thing possible. At number 9 sits one of the strangest stories in the state. The actual London Bridge was dismantled in England, shipped to Arizona stone by stone, then rebuilt completely in Lake Havasu City. Someone bought a historic bridge from London, took it apart, sent it across the ocean, and put it back together in the middle of the Arizona desert. The bridge now sits in a place that has nothing to do with its history. Number 8 is Humphreys Peak, which is sacred to 13 different Native American tribes. This mountain sits on top of a dormant volcano and holds spiritual significance for more tribes than almost any other peak in America. 13 separate cultures all consider this same mountain holy. The volcano brought them together in reverence. Even though the mountain could wake up again someday, it remains one of the most spiritually important places in the Southwest. Coming in at number 7, the Grand Canyon's inner gorge is so deep that it exposes rocks from Earth's Pre-Cambrian era. This was before complex life existed anywhere on the planet. You are looking at stone that formed when Earth had no trees, no animals, barely anything alive at all. The canyon bottom shows you what the planet looked like before life took over. It is rock from an empty world. At number 6, we learned that Arizona was once an ocean floor. You can still find marine fossils in the mountains today, shells and sea creatures preserved in stone thousands of feet above sea level. The mountains used to be underwater. The ocean covered this land, and then the Earth pushed it all skyward over millions of years. Ancient sea life now sits at the top of peaks in the middle of the desert. Number 5 is the Mogollon Rim again. But here is why it matters. This escarpment is the geological dividing line between the Colorado Plateau and the Basin and Range. Two completely different worlds meet at this exact line. Cross the rim, and you cross from one version of geology into another. The plateau and the basin are so different, they might as well be separate planets. The rim is where they collide, and everything changes in an instant. At number 4, Barringer Crater takes the spotlight. The asteroid that created it was traveling 26,000 miles per hour when it hit. The impact released energy equivalent to 10 megatons of TNT. That is more explosive force than anything humans have ever created, except hydrogen bombs. The asteroid vaporized instantly, and the shockwave flattened everything for miles. The crater is basically a nuclear blast site from nature. Number 3 gets mysterious. Arizona's underground megacave system near the Grand Canyon was supposedly discovered and reported in a 1909 newspaper article, but nobody has ever found it or verified it actually exists. The story describes enormous caverns with artifacts and tunnels deep beneath the canyon. If it is real, it is one of the greatest archaeological finds in history. If it is fake, someone invented an incredible legend that refuses to die. Coming in at number 2, something people get wrong constantly. The Grand Canyon is not the deepest canyon in North America. Hell's Canyon on the Oregon-Idaho border is actually deeper. The Grand Canyon just happens to be the most spectacular and most famous. It wins on drama and beauty, but it loses on raw depth. Hell's Canyon quietly holds the record, while everyone assumes the Grand Canyon is the champion. And finally, at number 1, Arizona is one of the few places on Earth where you can stand in one spot and see geological evidence spanning nearly 2 billion years of planetary history. From the bottom of the Grand Canyon to its rim, you witness almost half of Earth's entire existence. In one view, you see the planet's story from near its beginning to now. No place else on Earth lets you see time itself laid out like this.